Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to WeatherBrains episode number 794, the weekly show all about weather. This is the pre-show. It's a magical time. We basically do three things here. We share boring personal stories, humorous anecdotes, and we say outrageous things. It's a Monday night weather party, and we are here, ladies and gentlemen. So you know what I got to do now? I got to get the embed code locked in. Then we got to get the guests on, and then we start the show. And if you want to see the beginning of the content here, move the slider over about 5 minutes. But you might miss something good. You never know. All right, so this is for April 5th, 2021. Got the, I know what you're watching. If you're watching this live, you're watching that basketball deal, Final Four championship. Got it over my monitor over here. How's your brackets? What's embarrassing? So my family does one every year, a little group. And typically I do pretty well. Not this year. Not at all. In fact, I have come in dead last of our four family members. My wife beat me like a drum. Two boys beat me like a drum. It's just not good. But that's okay. All right, let's get everybody on the shoe here. I think we've got, I know that Jen is out tonight. I think everybody else just might be on the show. And we got some really big anniversary shows coming up here. I know we've got the April 15th anniversary show and the April 27th anniversary show from 10 years ago. That was a quite a month for weather. It's 2011. Goodness, April 2011, 10 years ago. You blink and it just happened yesterday. That's crazy. But we'll be doing some shows to kind of honor those folks that did not survive those horrible tornadoes. And we'll talk about the science behind it and some of the people. And I think it's good for everybody just to sit back and share a little bit. Ooh, and I got a picture for Bill Murray. I got to show him before we start, too. Uh-oh. Bill's lens is fogged up. That's not good. I think he just stepped out of the shower in the sauna.
Yeah, that's it.
Wow. I've never seen your lens fogged up before. This can be good or this can be bad.
I don't know what that was. Must have been some chicken wings from dinner on it.
And that's a show title. So our director back in the back, they actually watch this show.
Oh, I'm
sometimes.
So sorry. What is wrong with you people?
And he watched you last week and he sent a graphic just for you, if I can find it.
That's very nice of them, I'm sure. Was I picking my nose?
No, it's not quite to that level, but it's good. All right, let me see if I can get it screen shared here real quick. Oh yeah. So let's see. Share screen. There you go.
Mr. T.
He said that mic sticking out of your head, made you look just like Mr. T.
I just had the earbobs.
Pity the fool.
I don't think I could call
pity the fool.
Earrings earbobs, though. That would probably not be good.
No, I wouldn't do that.
All right, let's see if I can get my mic to work. That's going to be the problem here. All right, microphone, AirPods. All right, good. Speaker, AirPods. All right, let's invite the other guests.
Yeah, your audio sounds good.
So now, well, that was the condenser mic. So now this should be as good, I hope. All right, let's see. All right, got to do one more thing here. A lot of moving parts on this show nowadays.
I was showing the our friends got the Final Four going over here.
Me too.
Final two.
Yeah, Final two.
I've actually been to is it Gonzaga or Gonzaga? I never know.
I think it's Gonzaga. I think Charles Barkley calls it Gonzaga. And some lady tweeted and said, "Will Charles Barkley ever pronounce this right?" She had some French name, and he goes, maybe, but I'll never pronounce your name right.
No, so Old Shoe and I, we were walking down the street
in Spokane.
We were walking down the street one evening. It's almost like standing on a corner in Winslow, Arizona. You know, we were walking down the street.
Such a fine sight to be or see.
And all of a sudden, there was the entrance to Gonzaga. I mean, I had no idea where this place was, but
neither does anybody else. They're not real sure that it really exists. So I guess you're the first people to confirm it.
No, Old Shoe and I have been to their campus. We walked in there. This was in Spokane, Washington. And I want to say it had to have been a National Weather Association annual meeting.
Had to be, yeah. What else would you have been in Spokane for?
Yeah, I mean, it was a really nice place. The people were wonderful, and you know, it was a very clean city. And but that's just funny. I had no earthly idea that Gonzaga was located there. So I have.
Who's the most famous graduate of Gonzaga, James?
Well, it's not Dr. John. We know that.
No.
Whoa, Dr. John's got a new set here. Wow. Ooh,
isn't that good looking?
Nice.
Yeah, it's called the basement.
New house. Yeah,
it's called the basement.
That is a good looking set. Wow, that's awesome. Goodness gracious. I mean, I need to up the ante here a little bit. I mean, how lame is this?
At least you didn't say I was in a roach motel tonight, James. That's an improvement.
Well, no, you fogged up your glass there. I mean, I figured maybe you had a sauna or you're in the spa or something.
Yeah, that's
there.
it. I mean, it's the hot tub.
No. Everybody go back and watch the beginning of the replay, and you'll see Bill's camera was totally fogged up. So I just thought he was in some upper end resort in the spa this time instead of the Roach Motel. So no, who's the most famous graduate? You never told your story.
Bing Crosby.
Oh,
is that right?
That's what I heard.
So you don't get that on the other weather podcast. Only on this weather podcast do you get that information.
Yeah. And with that, you should leave. But Dr. Jim Fleming's been through this before, so he knows.
Yeah.
Dr. Fleming, can you hear us okay?
Yeah, I had to look up where Gonzaga was too after Sunday night's game.
Yeah,
Spokane.
they're gonna be national champions tonight, I think.
A perfect record, huh?
I think it'll be fun if they do. We're just
but apparently they had a buzzer beater to win the game.
Yeah, I didn't watch it.
I fell asleep. I didn't see the end of it, but they had a buzzer beater to win the game Saturday night, which is kind of like awesome.
I thought they were going to win by 14 points, so I didn't watch it. I was disappointed.
So, all right. Doug, can you hear us okay? You good?
Loud and clear.
Okay.
Thanks for having me back.
All right. Hey,
you're always welcome, Doug.
Thanks for not hanging up on us. But most people, when they get on a Zoom call and they see us, they immediately hang up and run.
It's a natural reaction.
Yeah, totally natural here. So let's get this thing started because we are 2 minutes after the top of the hour. So there's track one. There's track number two. And here we go in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
WeatherBrains is brought to you by Midland Weather Radio. Every home, school, and business should have a NOAA Weather Radio, the official voice of the National Weather Service. And the AMS Weather Band.
Join the American Meteorological Society by becoming a member of the band. The AMS Weather Band is a global community of weather enthusiasts dedicated to learning and sharing their love of science. Visit amsweatherband.org to learn more and join the band today.
WeatherBrains episode number 794. The weekly show all about weather. This is for Monday, the 5th of April, 2011. And we're getting into the time of the year where just about every day there's a tornado anniversary. And this is a big one for my neck of the woods. We had a big EF5 on this date in 1977 that killed 23 people in the northern part of Birmingham. Dr. Fujita came down and intensely studied that one. But we're not here to talk about old weather. We're here to talk about Nate Johnson and his beard. Nate, how's that? You got that thing working. I mean, you're working that beard. It really looks good on you.
Well, thank you. Yeah. Got to do something with the pandemic.
John DeBlock had nothing on you, Nate.
No, I don't know. John's was nice. I have beard envy.
And that was a show title.
That was the show title last week. But look who's back, Dr. John. Dr. John, it is an honor that you're back.
See, his hair on the top of his head, like, blows my beard out of the water. I mean, that's just, look at that coif,
I
man.
can't grow any hair here.
The man
And I
has
can't
the
grow
hair
any
of
here.
an angel.
Yeah.
John has the hair of an angel. If you're listening to this, I mean, this man has the greatest hair of anybody in the weather enterprise. It's unbelievable.
On top of my head, maybe.
Yeah. So John, you're in a whole new place here. This is kind of exciting. I like the look.
Yeah, thanks, James. We moved about a year ago, and it was the only weekend of last winter where we actually had winter weather, and we ended up moving on that weekend. So how appropriate.
It just kind of works out that way. But that is a really nice. In fact, I thought it was a chroma key deal. That's not a chroma key set. That's your real place.
That's it's the basement, but it's okay. It works.
Okay. Bill Murray.
If that's the
Dr.
basement,
John,
I want to see the rest of the house, James. That's pretty amazing.
Anytime,
Dr. John
Bill.
has many leather-bound books, and his home smells of rich mahogany. But Bill, I'm going to turn it over to you. Let's bring our guest on here, and let's get rocking and rolling. We'll see if some of the other regulars show up here shortly.
Yeah, it's going to take me a while. Of course, Dr. John, the illustrious Dr. John's back with us tonight because he, of course, knew Joanne Simpson, and we're excited about that. And Doug Hildebrand joins us. He is the What do they call you now, Doug? The chief ambassador of Weather Ready Nation, the head chief potentate of communications. Yeah, that's pretty good. So we're thrilled to have you here tonight because we're really thrilled about the AMS Weather Band. I joined several weeks ago. Got my pen right here, Doug, and rocking my pen tonight. Had to wear a jacket so I could show it off to you. And we appreciate the Weather Band and what you guys are doing, and want to hear more about that. And you've got some ambassadors coming on with you when we get through with Dr. Fleming tonight to talk about that. So how's life going for you?
It's going great. We got over 11,400 ambassador organizations. We've got my favorite day of the year, which is Wednesday, which is Safe Place Selfie. And we're going to be encouraging millions of people across the country to post their Safe Place Selfie and challenge others. Number one preparedness action right there. Safe place.
Yeah, I think Nate just took a picture of his, so he's going to selfie it later. So, but we're glad you're here. So we want you to join in tonight and celebrate the life and career of Dr. Joanne Simpson. Aubrey Urbanowitz joining us here at the last second. Hey, Aubrey, how are you?
Sorry, I'm running late, guys.
It's the theme tonight. Running
a
late.
lot of people don't know, Aubrey, that we actually have real jobs, and this is like our shift.
Dr. John Scala.
It is.
Oh my goodness, Dr. Scala, it's so good to see you. I was actually thinking about you last week, and I was like, God, I got to send that man an email.
Well,
as I live and breathe, you look fantastic as always.
Oh, thank you, Doug. Doug, good to see you too. It's been, ages.
But we follow each other every day.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Always on the Twitter. Jim, nice to meet you.
Oh, hi.
Well, and speaking of Jim, our guest weather brain tonight, the first guest weather brain, is a leading authority on weather, climate, and human affairs. He served as a contributing author and expert reviewer for the IPCC. He's a fellow of the American Association for the Advancement of Science, as well as the AMS. His awards include the Edward Bruckner Prize for Interdisciplinary Climate Research, the Sally Hacker and Louis Batten Book Prizes. He studied astronomy and atmospheric science before earning his PhD in history from Princeton University. He enjoys fishing, good jazz, good barbecue. I had some terrible barbecue tonight, Dr. Fleming, but that's okay. He loves seeing students flourish and, of course, watching clouds. And that is the introduction from his book, First Woman, Joanne Simpson and the Tropical Atmosphere. And Dr. James Fleming, welcome back to the show.
It's cool. It's great to be back. And I'm in Dayton visiting my family here. My kids are in Dayton. And we had a blue sky tornado today. At least they tested the sirens today in Dayton.
Wow. Yeah,
Perfectly blue sky. And the sirens went off every first Monday, or I think it's first Monday of the month.
Well, it's really good to have you on tonight. And Dr. Scala says he turns into a pumpkin tonight at 10:15 Eastern. I told him we'd still be going at midnight. because James, this book is outstanding. I mean, it really has been a joy to read it. So tell our listeners who Joanne Simpson was and why she's such an important person in meteorology. And Dr. John, everything he says, you know, when she went to London for her fellowship and she spoke, and this is in your book, Dr. Fleming, you know, when she, you know, the tradition in British science circles was to attack the speaker. And I don't know if anybody else has heard that or knows that. So every time he says anything tonight, Dr. John, you're supposed to yell rubbish. And that's the drinking game, because that's what they, you know, that's what they do. But
yeah, but then when we're done, we're supposed to go out for a pint.
That's exactly right. So I bet we won't have any trouble making that happen. I'm not sure what pint Nate's partaking of there, but
I have a pint of water here next to me, so
it probably
No,
will
I
not appear
wanted to
in
say
an English
something
pub.
new in the book about, well, especially Joanne, who I had met and really admired, but it's also a chance to speak about women's history and the history of science, and to look at Joanne's role in tropical research. So the subtitle of First Woman is Joanne Simpson and the Tropical Atmosphere. And it was really a labor of love, because I had a choice of reading about 3,000 papers on tropical meteorology, you know, from 1,000 authors. And I ended up following Joanne's papers through the archive, a wonderful archive on her in Cambridge, Mass. At the Radcliffe Institute. And so she was a distinguished woman in science that Radcliffe had identified. And they invited her in the 1990s to start collecting her papers. I remember back then she sent me a big binder full of photocopies of her archive. And I set it aside. I waited 20 years. And then I said, damn, that was a really good archive. And I went back came down from Maine on the Concord bus, and I was able to work in the archive for a couple of days. Came back with my students. We put on the white gloves, looked through the photographs, artifacts in there. There's a silver iodide canister mock-up, not armed, but and there's her ballet shoes are in there, and the students, boy, they just got so excited to be able to touch, you know, the original materials and be able to take her basic archive and turn it into a story of her life and her work.
Her first husband was a professor at the in Chicago, where she was, and he taught her, I think you say in your book, to record everything in notebooks, sort of like I do here. You know, I have literally everything every day is in there for, you know, years. Dr. John, you learned that from her, didn't you? Look at that.
Yeah,
It's got him his show and tell here.
I know.
So share that story, Dr. John, about
sure.
you observing her.
Sure. So I joined the Severe Storms Branch at NASA Goddard Space Flight Center in 1990 after I completed my PhD, and she was one of my mentors there. And I remember we had weekly seminars, you know, and I would go in and we'd sit down and listen to whoever was giving the talk. And Joanne showed up with a steno pad just like this, and she took notes during every seminar. And I thought, I should be doing that. If Joanne is taking notes, then I should be doing this. And that started a trend. I've been doing it now for 31 years. I keep notes on everything. And it was because of Joanne. I saw her doing this and I followed.
And you know, those notebooks are in the archive.
I would love to look at those.
If they open up again after this pandemic, it's at Radcliffe Schlesinger Library on the campus of Harvard.
Wow.
You can just sign in. You can just have a wonderful time in there.
And I would.
So when one of you young meteorologists with a journalistic bent, you just go ahead and take a note in your notebook tonight to go back when Dr. John Scala passes sometime long in the future and get his notebooks, because they're going to be just as good as Joanne Simpson. So you mentioned, you know, how important she is as a part of women's history. This, you know, last month was Women's History Month,
right,
Dr. Fleming, and your book had really, you know, great timing because of that. I think it's really fitting. You know, you mentioned that she studied cumulus clouds, and we'll get into that tonight, but she thought that was an analogy to, her struggles, the obstacles that she faced to get a career in meteorology. So, why don't you take us through, those steps of, how she tried so hard and, got initial, encouragement from Rossby, but then discouragement from him. Take that story and tell it a little bit.
Well, Joanne was a product of Cambridge, Mass, and grew up there, and was expected to go to Radcliffe. Her grandmother had gone there, her mother had gone there, and she went to Chicago. She jumped on the train and went out and began to study the great books and the great ideas, and was fascinated by astrophysics. And then the war was breaking out. This was 1940 when she went there. It was 1942 when she was looking for what to do, because she kept losing classmates, and the war in the Pacific was devastating.
Wow.
And she kept losing her friends and getting letters back from the families of these people. And so she was determined to do something. So she wanted to join the Waves, or the Women's Air Corps. But that would have given her a desk job at the time. She was a pilot, and she had learned some of that in Boston. And she was the president of the Aero Club at Chicago, and was taking a course in meteorology from some other person. So somebody says, you should go see the famous Rossby. And she went into Rossby's office, and about 20 minutes later, she was transformed. He said, I know what you can do. Get out, don't take a desk job, but begin teaching the cadets meteorology. But first she had to take the meteorology course, and she was only a sophomore. So
you know all about that, don't you, Doug? You went straight for meteorology as your second master's without an undergraduate course. That probably was not an easy accomplishment.
So by her account, she took 2 physics courses and an advanced math course that summer of 42, just to get into the first training program. And after that, she flourished. She was one of the top students, and she taught at NYU, and came back to Chicago. She was definitely on an upward trajectory. This is when she married her first husband, Victor Starr. And she didn't know that Chicago had a rule that no 2 family members could work together. It was a nepotism rule. So immediately she was out of a job when she got back, and was married to Victor and expecting a child. And she worked nights and weekends, and she cobbled out a career at the Illinois Institute of Technology. She taught all kind of physics. She taught every branch of physics, which she said was really good for me, because I wasn't just put into a small niche of meteorology. But then she talked her chair into allowing her to teach a course for engineers on the weather. And this was how, buildings hold up to the wind, heating, air conditioning, HVAC, and she went from there. Back to Chicago, this time separated from Starr. They divorced, and she went into the PhD program. She was determined. And this analogy that Bill was mentioning about the cumulus clouds, it occurred to me that when you look at the tropical, air, you see a lot of popcorn cumulus. You see a lot of small cumulus that they're never going to develop because of the trade wind inversion. And they're small, and they're fair weather cumulus. And for me, it struck me as a metaphor for all the women in meteorology who never rose that high, especially in the 1940s. They were getting desk jobs, they were launching balloons, they were shuttling aircraft sometimes. But Joanne was the hot tower. She was the towering cumulonimbus that broke through and went on to the top of the troposphere and made waves of her own. So I had a research student who wanted to interpret Joanne in the different waves of feminism. There's this thing, first wave, second wave feminism. I said, wait a minute. I said, Joanne made waves of her own. Let's use that as a theme in the book. And so she was a towering convective breakthrough person that really, I guess, made a chance for more breakthroughs for more people. So we were lucky to have a chance to interview her students, people like Peggy Lamone, people like Claire Parkinson, who John must know, and the whole gang at Goddard. We did a lot of interviews, And we kept getting, Joanne was great. Joanne was good. Joanne was a great mentor. And I said, well, we're getting the same message from everybody that knew her. So instead of that, I took a video camera and I asked them to just give me a minute or two, a story. How did you meet? What do you remember? What's one of the key events in your relationship with Joanne? And so we compiled a YouTube playlist. It's called Joanne Simpson Vignettes, if you search for it on YouTube. And people were saying, this is what happened when we met. This is how we, some people met on the floor of Goddard where they were sitting down looking at maps in her office, and others met on an airplane where we were bouncing around in the clouds. And Peggy Lamone told a story about seeing Joanne on the CBS Quest Science Quest show in the 1950s. And she's watching TV. She's a young lady. She was in her brother's room and they're watching the CBS show. And she said, I didn't know women could do meteorology. I didn't know women could have careers like this. And so Peggy got her start by watching Joanne on TV as a young lady. And so that technique, rather than just doing a whole oral interview with everybody, that technique really brought Joanne's importance to other people to life. She was transformative, and I think I'm getting a head nod from John.
Absolutely, that's a great word, Dr. Fleming. Transformative for anybody that met her, interacted with her, mentored her, or mentored by her.
Yeah.
I agree.
So what's your 1 or 2 minute story of something you really remember about her, a peak moment?
Oh my goodness, there are many. She was, for me, she was a tremendous advocate. I would go into her office. Well, actually, you know what? Let me begin that with another story, and that is, so I had a postdoc at NASA for 2 years. That was the limit. You could get it for 12 months, or you could get it for 24 months. So I wanted to work with her for 2 years. And nearing the end of my 2-year period, my wife was diagnosed with a serious medical condition, and she was required to actually go in for some major surgery. And the surgery was scheduled after I completed my postdoc. So in those days, this was the early 90s, a pre-existing condition eliminated you from getting healthcare coverage. So if we were going to leave the postdoc position and then I was going to go on with a contractor and still work at NASA, but then I had to get healthcare coverage, we couldn't come up with the money to support that operation. So I went to Joanne and I said, I'm in a bit of a pickle here. My wife needs this surgery and my postdoc ends in a month. Mm-hmm. And I need your guidance here. Is it possible to extend my postdoc so that I could maintain the healthcare coverage? And she said, well, how much time do you need? And I said, well, if I could just get another month, then we'd get the surgery scheduled and I'd be fine. The next day, I had a meeting with the director of the associateship program at NASA Goddard. I walked into his office and he said, Joanne says you need some help. What do you need? And I said, I need another month of a postdoc. You got it. and so therefore, we went ahead and my wife got the surgery, it was successful. And Joanne, I mean, that's just one example of her true large-heartedness for people that she cared for. And she cared for everybody she came into contact with.
That's wonderful. Bill, are we recording this? Maybe we could put it in the second edition.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. You'll be able to go back and see this on YouTube or anywhere, any of our places. We welcome Troy Kimmel, who's joined us tonight from his new digs in Austin. Troy, we're so glad you're here.
Thank
Dr.
you, Bill.
Kim
I appreciate it. My apologies, everyone, for being a few minutes late. Bill knows the full story, but we'll talk about it later.
But we're glad you're here. And Dr. Kim Kloko, McLean, you came at exactly the right moment. We're talking about Joanne Simpson and some of the trials and tribulations that she went through in the 40s. And we're about to talk more about, Rossby encouraged her to, work, in the government, the program A, get the training and, and be a meteorologist. But when it came time to go for her master's and doctorate, he discouraged her. So talk about that for a minute. Because he just totally did an about face on her, didn't
Yeah, well, Rossby was an enigma, and it's very hard to work on his whole life because he never left any collection of papers behind. He was very peripatetic, and wherever he was, it was the center of his seminar. But he did not encourage Joanne and would not supervise her PhD, even though she was a straight A student. I put it in the bulletin of AMS in the January issue. There's a little account of the book, but this one comes out of pages 36 and 37. And she was a straight A student, but she wasn't offered a graduate fellowship after she had gotten her master's at Chicago. And so he thought that offering financial support to a woman was a lost cause. This is Joanne's account of it. She was discouraged. You can imagine if you're a graduate student, a very famous advanced meteorologist remarked to her once, when she was getting ready to do her thesis, he said, it's ironic tragedy to see the brain of a man in the body of a woman. This was about 1945. Her graduate student advisor told her, no woman has ever earned a PhD in meteorology. No woman ever will. Even if you did, no one would give you a job. And so with that kind of opposition, she just said, I'm going to outwork those guys. I'm going to prove them wrong. I'm going to take that message and not get discouraged, but just keep going. And she had no role models at the time. There were no other women in the department, but she moved on. She persevered. Her first spouse, Starr, and Rossby were both theoretically minded, and they were looking at the perturbation theory of upper atmospheric flow. And she tried her hand at that, but she said, you know what I really like to do is get right up there in the atmosphere. I was a pilot in college, and I'm going to go back to flying. And an event at Woods Hole got her going to work on tropical cumulus and to fly into the boundary layer at first, and then eventually into the clouds. And they had an old Navy PBY boat that was airship that was just buoyant enough that they used it as the vertical velocity measurement. They would see how fast the altitude was changing to try to estimate vertical velocities, and she did something that Rossby couldn't do. That is, she studied these clouds very directly, firsthand, and then she made a model of the clouds. So I can't just dismiss Rossby, because they had this lifelong, I don't want to call it love-hate, but there was some flirting from Rossby though. But Joanne was working manually on the model there at the Imperial College sabbatical she had. And she was calculating each box and erasing figures and putting in new figures. And she had a big table full of boxes where she was doing a calculation of convection. And Rossby said, hey, we've got this computer over in Sweden. It was called the BESK, the B-E-S-K, and it was the best computer at the time. He said, come on over, bring your, it was her second husband, Malchus. He said, bring Willem with you. And they went to Sweden for about 6 months, and she was able to work with a programmer and run her whole model on the BESK. Her account of that model is in the Rossby Memorial volume. They were preparing to have a 60th birthday for Rossby, and he passed away. So he helped her, he encouraged her, then he backed off. Some of his male colleagues in Chicago clobbered her with their comments, but she was determined to keep going. She was even persona non grata in the Chicago libraries because she had a baby in arms. Said, we can't have women with children in the library. It's going to disturb the other scholars. So she had everything.
Kim, you need to take your heart medicine, because I think the next 30 minutes are going to be kind of tough here. So
the next one.
So be ready. We got a lot of bad stories here, Kim. So it's going to be pretty bad. So keep going, Jim. Yeah, that's just one of them right there.
Oh no, this
how
was
minimized she was.
She couldn't work there because of nepotism. She had to find her own way at Illinois Tech. She was not given the fellowship. She just persevered, and there was a connection there at Woods Hole that got her going, which was the cloud photograph. They had moving pictures of tropical clouds, and they were looking at how the convection developed. And they started to think about entrainment and whether the dry air was coming into the clouds and what was really happening here. And then she just, and Rossby at the time, he said, oh, clouds. So he said, clouds are a good topic for a little girl to study. he said, you better do well, or you're going to embarrass everybody else in the field because because you got your PhD here at Chicago. So it was just like this on and off encouragement. Sometimes he helped. Most of the time, it was just her breaking through. I almost called the book "Breaking Through." I almost called the book "Hot Towers." We ended up with First Woman.
Well, you mentioned his quote, what he said to her, because it's good. It's a good field for for a girl to play in meteorology because no male meteorologist would touch it. and then he came and found her doing these incredible calculations with slide rules, and like you said, you need my computer, and she pulled it off. She actually made it work. But tell the story about her the last night before she was supposed to get it all ready. They were having to work in the middle of the night, and the computer lab was closed. So what did she do? What would Joanne Simpson do in that situation? Kim Cloco McLean. She finds at 3 a.m. that the computer lab is locked. What would she do?
Obviously, she'd break in and, with the programmer and kept working. She was at the end of her fellowship too, like John's story. She was out of time. They were scheduled to go back to Woods Hole and maybe the next day or two, and she didn't have her final run in, so she just broke in and you see her kind of sin boldly and ask for forgiveness later, but got it done. And that became the core of that Rossby Memorial article in his volume.
When she was at Chicago, she lived for the Christmas parties. And Dr. John, I know you probably had some outstanding Christmas parties when you were around her, both at UVA and at NASA. So we want to have competing Christmas stories here, Dr. John. Tell us a Christmas party story.
Well, Jim talks in his book about when the Simpsons decided they were getting too old to sail, that they would live sail vicariously from their home in Washington. So they would invite a number of their colleagues and friends to their Christmas parties in this beautiful home on I don't know, Jim, was it the 5th or 8th floor? It was way up.
Mm-hmm.
And it overlooked, was it the Potomac it overlooked?
Yeah, Southwest waterfront.
Yeah, it was gorgeous. So here I am. I'm just a newbie postdoc at NASA, and I'm just trying to not make any noise and hide in the corner. And I walk into their apartment for a Christmas party. And maybe you didn't know, but Bob Simpson was an accomplished musician. So he's playing in the background, and I walk in there and it's a who's who in meteorology for a Christmas party. And I just couldn't believe it. I was thinking I should not be here. But those times where I would just sit there, grab something to eat, and just listen to, the pioneers in meteorology just talk back and forth. Unbelievable.
I think Bob was a trumpet player, wasn't he?
Yes, he was. Yeah, and he'd take it out and he'd go away. And I was thinking, what else can he do?
Yeah, she married meteorologists pretty much her whole career. And hers was kind of a quest to find fulfillment in love, which she did twice, and it was also a quest to show that women could be. We didn't call her the best woman in meteorology. We could just call her the best scientist in meteorology. She was the best at what she did, but she was also trying to prove herself throughout most of her early life. She found real happiness with Bob later in life.
So talk about her relationship with her mother and what an obstacle that was to her. Jim.
Well, it was a real sore spot because she was the first child. Her mother, I don't think, wanted to have a child at the time, but did. And when her younger brother came along 5 years later, the mother put all the attention into this son. And so young Joanne tells the story. She said her mother was bathing the baby and feeding the baby and nursing the baby and cuddling the baby. And Joanne said, "Mother, why don't you cuddle me? Why don't you take care of me?" And her mother said something very cutting. She said, "You have to be lovable to be loved," which was cut deeply into her heart. And yet, to Joanne's credit, later in life, she made a big long list of good things that her mother had shown her. How to be responsible, how to take care of your own body. So her mother was a feminist. She worked on women's rights back in the age before the vote and before suffrage, and Joanne made, to her credit, she made about a 10-point list of all the good things her mother did. Even though her mother disowned her, she never got a penny from her mother's inheritance. Her mother was a complete cold shoulder for her. And then she set out to try to show that she was lovable, I think. That's the way we interpret it. We didn't try to psychoanalyze her too much. We just followed the storyline that she was presenting us. And she didn't find love with her first husband, Starr. She didn't find love with her second husband, Malchus. But when she got to Woods Hole, she fell head over heels with Claude Ronnet, the photographer who was doing all the filming.
Yeah.
So they did a lot of very romantic flights over the Caribbean, sunsets, and they went across the Pacific on military aircraft transport planes. And it was called the Pacific Cloud Hunt. And the really funny comparison, if you read the account that Joanne writes in the Chicago Magazine, it's all very scientific, and they were looking for clouds, and they were going to photograph these big boomers and look for the convergence zones. But if you look at her notebooks, she had 3 personal notebooks that were uncovered in the archive. It was all about Claude. She just wanted to take a nice trip with Claude and do some filming. Of course, it was important scientific work at the time. It was 1957. But by the time the book came out, which was about tropical convection, the whole satellite era had begun, and there were so many other ways to take photographs of clouds. So anyway, it was romantic in not just in the love affair sense, but it was romantic in the sense of trying to find out how the world works. They were trying to find out how each other worked. Claude didn't want to be a scientist, and Joanne kept trying to sort of psychoanalyze him. And the archive is there's about 40 boxes in the archive, and there's 39 of them were open for research. But there was one that had all this red tape wrapped around it. And I had gone through the 39. I said, "What's in that box?" And the archivist said, "Oh, that's restricted." And I said, "Until how long?" She said, "Oh, until January 2015. I said, "Well, this is October 2015, so bring me the box." And we unwrapped it, and it was 3 personal notebooks she had kept from 1947, when she first went over to Woods Hole, until the 1980s, after Claude had died. It was all about Claude. And in the boxes, there were notes that they had passed back and forth across the aisle of the plane as they were flying, and there were Christmas cards, and there were especially these 3 notebooks. So I transcribed the notebooks. I'm hoping that somebody would want to publish the notebooks too. Little vignettes or little excerpts are in the book, but I called my notebook typing thoughts and feelings. It wasn't just about feelings, although it was quite romantic. And then that broke up. She got a position as a full professor at UCLA with her husband Malchus, and that kind of broke the nepotism barrier, at least for that university. But they weren't happy. UCLA was not Falmouth, and they broke up their little tight community there near Woods Hole. And even though they were living at Malibu and they were both full professors, she was tremendously unhappy. And that ended that marriage. So then, through long associations with other tropical people, she was able to develop a deep relationship with Bob Simpson. So I think she found love twice. Well, more than twice, because Ronnie was romantic love, and then Bob was just they were soulmates. They were interested in hurricanes. They were both interested in the tropics. They were like lovebirds, to hear Rick Anthony tell the stories about their seminars together. And then And then she found really love with her grandchildren. There's lots of pictures of her grandkids in the archive. So later in life, and she found, well, there's so much to say. I'm trying to tell you the whole book, but she didn't.
Yeah, we've just about covered the most of it because it's just a fascinating
At
read.
UCLA, she wasn't happy, and she didn't find success at Virginia, where she was given a named chair. But she did find happiness at NASA and with her spouse Bob and with her grandchildren.
Right.
And this quote, Aubrey, will make your head explode. She was told that male professionals at the top of their field assumed that women went to college to find a husband and to graduate school to find a more interesting husband. And and I'll ask this to Kim and Aubrey, do you think that's gone today to the most part? I mean, Kim, you've blazed a trail, on the academic side. Aubrey, you obviously are doing it in broadcasting. Do you think most of that's gone today? Or tell me it is. Don't disillusion me.
I can't even think of a time when in my adult life when that would have been a thought. I think we probably got away from that, I don't know if I want to say maybe as early as the 80s, but certainly in the 90s, I think that probably went away when, more people learned that, hey, we can do more than just keep a house. We've got careers.
Right.
And we're pretty darn smart too.
Yeah. We're not just a man's brain in a woman's body. That was wow. What a quote.
You passed out when that one came back in.
Yeah, what a great time to join the show for that one. That was blood pressure and rising. But yeah, my adult life has been very much like Aubrey. I do think that that's gone, and I worked really, really hard. And part of it though was that I was in an engineering school that was male dominated, in undergrad. And I don't know if it's that I felt the need to prove myself because of that, but I definitely schooled all the guys in my class. But most of them were engineers. Most of them were engineers, and they knew that they could go out and get a job with, C's, get degrees and get something high paying. And in the meteorology program, they were very upfront with us that most people weren't going to make it in the program period. And if you even did, there weren't a whole lot of jobs. So I was like, okay, well, I've got to do all the A's. That's just how this is going to have to be. But I do know, as much as I didn't experience any of that sexism in my academic life, it was present around the time my mom was going through. She started a master's in genetics at Notre Dame and was told very much the same thing when there were jobs that were sort of open doing other things that she could get with her bachelor's degree background. Her advisors that were men, sort of hinted, well, you're already married. What are you waiting for? And the economy had the downturn in, sort of the Carter years. And she went for it instead of medical school. And it's really, I don't have to go back one generation. And right. My mother is much, much smarter than I am. She should have been the first doctor in the family. And she would have been a terrific one. And she was, always Dr. Mom to us. But yeah, you don't have to go back very far to see that. So it's very sad to see that Joanne hit that, and it was still being experienced up until, like you were saying, Aubrey, about the 80s, definitely.
Well, think of all the contributions that we've lost. I was just watching a NOVA, and y'all may have seen it, about a scientist, and I think his name was Percy Julian, who came up, African-American, who was brilliant, went to college in Indiana, gets ready to go get his master's degree, and nobody would touch him. They sent him to, he wanted to go to a really big school, and they said, go to Fisk and go back and teach your people. And he fought and fought and fought to get, his PhD, and did, through all odds and all sorts of humiliations, and finally arrived. But he would arrive at jobs jobs that he had accepted, and they would look at him and say, you're an African American. We can't hire you. And they would unhire him on the spot. He would go to a speaking engagement and, show up, and they would say, we had no idea you were African American. You can't speak to this group. Joanne experienced a lot of the same stuff. How many, those cumulus clouds didn't become hot towers, and the contributions that were left on the sidelines because of that? It's just unthinkable to me. And thank God that she had the perseverance, and that, that Dr. Julian had the perseverance. We would not have the glaucoma drug we have today if he had not done that. We would not have been able to synthesize steroids. We wouldn't have been able to make latex paint. And, Dr. John, you and Jim, about all the contributions, all the alphabet soup of programs that she was part of. Dr. Scala, talk about TRIM for a second, TRMM, that program. And I know, Jim, you say that was probably one of the ones she was most proud of.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, she was not going to retire until TRIM launched and was successfully operating. But Bill, before I talk about TRIM, I was hoping I could just read a quote. Joanne published a paper in 1973 in the Annals of the New York Academy of Sciences. And this is actually my pick of the week because it's an extraordinary paper. I came across this paper when I was working with her at NASA Goddard. And the title of the paper is Meteorologist, but that's not what the paper was about. So I just want to read a paragraph to you. I have devoted 30 years full-time to the profession, about half in university teaching and research, the other half in research organizations. I have published 80 papers and received some honors, that's an understatement, and opportunities for world travel and public service. The most costly of the many sex-linked obstacles I have encountered have been the nepotism rules enforced by employers. My personal and married life and child raising have surely suffered for the professional attainments I have reached, while my career in turn has been severely limited by my sex. I am currently not convinced that either the position, rewards, or achievement have been worth the cost. In the current culture, I think that the difficulties faced by a woman trying to combine top-level achievement with successful marriage and motherhood are close to prohibitive. Although I have attempted to build on my experience to advise young women determined to seek these goals. Now, remember, this was written in 1973. And when she went to NASA, as we have been talking about, she was a different person. I think she was attaining the professional, not only the professional achievement, but the personal achievement. And I saw a big change, I think, at that time. And you were talking about TRIM. Well, TRIM is an acronym. It's for Tropical Rainfall Measurement Mission. And she was the chief scientist in this program. And the idea was a novel idea was to put a satellite in space with a radar on it that would give us measurements of precipitation in the tropics. Never been done before. And if we could get that information, then we could start to produce things like energy budgets for the tropics and really have a great understanding of the heat engine of the tropics. That was her baby, and she was not going to retire until that was a success. And as we know, it sure was.
Jim, any response to any of that or anything you want to?
Hitting all the points here. Back to the discrimination point, Joanne and Peggy Limon were the first chairs of the Women and Minorities Commission in the AMS. And that was, I think they started in the 70s. So they were trying to address this issue of discrimination. And Joanne certainly was just a talent recruiter. She was not looking for just women. She was not looking for, she was not discriminating against talented guys. And she was also recruiting African-American people into the field. And with TRIM, it definitely was her baby. And on the video, you can see Chris Kummerow really sounding off passionately about that, how he would, I think the end of his interview, he said, I would die for her, because of the mentoring she gave me. And And back to that quote, that was in the 70s when she was highlighted by the New York Academy as one of the accomplished women in science. It wasn't just meteorology, but I ended the book with that thought. I mean, earlier I quoted that interview, but most significantly, she found true love twice. All the sacrifice, pain, exertion had indeed been worthwhile. So it's just echoing what John had said, that she did find resolution. She did reevaluate that statement back in the 70s, and she did win a lot more awards after the 70s.
She sure did.
She was the IMO award winner. She was the Rossby medalist, president of AMS, but one thing that's come up in the popular press is she wasn't absolutely the first doctorate. You know, there were people under Wilhelm Birkness in Germany in 1918 that got advanced degrees in geophysics, but she was the first American woman that had this kind of training at a modern, recognizingly modern meteorology department.
And it seemed to me, you know, with sexual harassment obviously being pervasive, that she knew how to deal with men in a time. It's not excusing what she was, going through, but she learned, it seemed, to be able to, to keep those men at bay, but get what she needed to advance and keep them at arm's length. That seemed to work, especially with people like Herbert Real and others who were big in her career, right, Jim?
Yeah, she says that they would go out for dinner, and he would buy a couple extra martinis, and she would take advantage of her femininity, but wouldn't let him take advantage of her. So they made a lifelong relationship of working on tropical issues. The same thing with Rossby, I guess she said, made a pass at her, and she was a very attractive person.
I was trying to think what actress she looked like, and it just occurred to me that she sort of looks like Cate Blanchett.
That's a good show. Well, there's a film company sniffing around the edges here. They might want to do a story of her life. But
well, they should get Cate Blanchett to be the actor.
Wow.
I'll give them that. I'll give them the recommendation.
Man, well, her life sounds so fascinating, and there's been a lot of discussion about all of the relationships that she, had through these different stages in her life. I'm curious a little bit about her children or child. I mean, you sort of mentioned that she was a working mother. The story you shared about her going in, and having to work in the library with an infant. I mean, that alone is a horrifying thought for me as the mother of two young children. And I'm just curious, at the time, how much support did she have on that front? How did she balance the taking care of children while sort of starting her career? Because those feelings that she shared, I can't help but wonder if they reflected this moment where everything you are sort of asked by society to pour your whole heart into both endeavors. If you're going to launch your career, you feel like, right around the time of your PhD, it's got to be then. You have to really invest and make the big splash and get things started, or you might fall off the wagon entirely. There's a momentum pressure, but there's also the motherhood pressure that goes along in parallel with it that makes that's so difficult. And I can't help but feel so grateful to have the support that I do. And even still, I barely keep it together a lot of days. So I'm just wondering if you can comment a little bit on that balance and how that looked for her.
Well, you hit it right on the nose. She had to do about 300% work because she was building a career. Just at the time, she had a second son too by 1950. Got her PhD in 49, had her second son by 1950. And she didn't have spousal support. Starr was a deadbeat dad and deadbeat husband. And so she report. There was one story that struck me very strongly. She had a a nanny or somebody was taking care of the children, but she would bring the baby into Woods Hole office for nursing. And then the nanny would take the baby back home. I guess, I mean, we have an infant here in the house with my son and daughter-in-law here. And I guess they're coming in every 3 hours. You know what I mean? And so she didn't have the spousal support. She didn't have the support of her department. And then she had the children that needed her support. So the third child, Karen, was born when she was at UCLA, and that was kind of an ultimatum child where Malchus had said, you either go with Claude Ronnet or you go with me, and I want you to prove your love to me. So it was very, but I interviewed 2 of the 3 children, and they're fully grown. They're in their 60s, I guess. And they both had very warm stories about their mother and how she brought the family back together, and how she had made a blended family with Bob Simpson's daughters. And so all of them, they kept buying bigger and bigger sailboats so they could all go out together and sleep on the boat and go into adventures in the Caribbean and around Miami. So she was able to, just like she was able to overcome her initial shock of her mother's lack of love, she was able to pull that family back together. And I think that when John, when you were reading the New York Academy account, she was definitely at the feeling that stress and wondering if it was all worth it. But by the end of her life, she knew it had been worth it, and she pulled it back together. So that was another kind of her nurturing and mentoring kind of thing.
When she was in London, you mentioned earlier that one of the things in the collection was her ballet shoes. And she was so precocious, Jim, that she learned ballet while she was in London as an adult, right?
Well, she was in some of the first forms with the young children, and she's a fully grown adult in her tutu, and I put a picture of that in the book, and she played adult roles in some of the ballets, but she was determined to pursue this passion that she had. And her dad in Cambridge had taken her to the ballet, and he was reported with the Boston Herald. He was the aviation reporter. He knew Charles Lindbergh, and they flew on some of the earliest flights in the world, some of the record flights. And he took her to ballet, and she really wanted to do that, but never had a chance to go back. So it's kind of like, I don't know. I was kind of like an ugly duckling story, where she wasn't loved and she was underappreciated, and she turned out to be this beautiful, accomplished individual.
So you mentioned a funny story when she took an abnormal psychology class when she was associated with Herbert Real, and the professor chose her to be hypnotized. So I've set the story up for you. Finish it out, because I don't think he was too happy about that.
Well, he wasn't too happy about it. But she actually says in the archive that she remembered a lot of this stuff she was putting in the archive because of that interaction with hypnosis. And so I think my funny story is I lost a book contract when my editor found out that some of the material was coming from that. And then Oxford picked it up and they loved the story. So I don't know where to go with
he may have been flirting with her a bit and along the way, or maybe even something more serious. I don't know, but he became a little lathered when he found out she was going to be hypnotized again, and he actually attended the hypnosis session just in case she said something that might not have favored him. I think
didn't want a public reveal. Yeah,
I thought that was a funny story, and I think that really adds a lot of color and depth to the book, and makes it even more interesting. So
it was a joy to write because there's a lot of color and depth to her and to her collection, and I considered it admirable that I think the smart people don't write their autobiographies, but they prepare enough material for someone to write their biographies. And there's this theory. If you want to have some fun, look up autobiography under Wikipedia, and it says basically, don't do it. Nobody can be objective about their own life. Mark Twain tried it 40 times, and Vannevar Bush couldn't write his, and so Joanne was smart enough not to do that, and constructed a really wonderful source of materials, but didn't tell the whole story at all. Just set up. There's even a letter in there that says, "I expect that someday some historian will use this Radcliffe collection for a book." And I said, that's me. I'm here. I'm using the material. I got all excited.
And then by 1954, it's really a game-changing year in terms of hurricanes, with Carol, Edna, and Hazel along the East Coast, and weather modification becomes a big thing. So talk about how she got involved in that process. And there are a couple of interesting stories in there too, Jim.
Yeah, there are. The hurricane landfalling in the 54 led to a U.S. Weather Bureau attempt to study them more clearly, in more focused way, and eventually resulted in the Storm Fury project, which was not all about modifying them. It was about learning more about them. And Bob was involved, and so they were able to. This is before they married. This was six or so years beforehand, maybe 8 years before they married. In fact, I'm doing my math. It's about 15 years before they married. So they worked together on Storm Fury, and it was about understanding them as well as trying to weaken their core circulation and maybe reduce some damage. And yet they had Weather Bureau sponsorship, but they also had the Navy with some material and some equipment. And this is where Pierre, what's his name, St. Vincent Armand, he developed the silver iodide flares, and the Navy was very much involved in trying not just to weaken them or to study them, but to control them. So she spoke out very strongly. She said there was a clash of values where the military wanted to weaponize the hurricanes. They wanted to send them out against an enemy fleet, or at least protect their own fleet by controlling them. And we were really much more interested in studying them. The same dynamic happened with, not exactly the same dynamic, but the idea that the Navy wanted to control the hurricanes and make the hurricanes work for them. And the scientists wanted to figure out how the hurricanes work, And so this kind of jumping to operationalizing the science too quickly. And so that jump was occurring also with the FACE program in Florida, where they were doing the Florida Area Cumulus Experiment. And the NOAA, at the time it was NOAA, they wanted to make it rain. And they wanted to show that they could, be practical and make rain on demand. And Joanne, that was enough for her. She started immediately to figure out a way to get out of there. And
and wasn't there an incident on the Today Show where she was pressured to say something that wasn't true, or to say something that was incorrect, and that seemed to be sort of the end of the line for her? Yeah,
she was supposed to say something about consulting with everybody involved and making it rain. And I don't want to name names on the air here, but they had a big falling out with the top administration, and they were also given administrators from away from Florida that were trying to. She was in Miami, and so was Bob, and they were both given instructions from afar that somebody new came in through NOAA. So she considered that to be very bureaucratic. It was also, in a way, it wasn't nepotistic. Bob had to work in operations while she could work in research. And to her credit, she would run her convective model every morning, given the current weather observations, to see if that convection would be suitable for seeding. And so she was running it as a pure science experiment, and got all tied up with the bureaucracy, with the statisticians, with the politics of it. and then she bailed out and went to Virginia for that named professorship. She was a big presence in GATE too. She was in the Africa program for the GATE GARP experiment, and was able to do a lot of interesting work together with models and satellites.
Jim, I got to follow up on what you've been talking about, because some of the topics here just cross so nicely with some of my experiences with Joanne. She was not only a fantastic mentor, but a huge supporter of a young scientist. And I would have these meetings with her in her office, and I would come up with some ideas and ask for her, her interaction, her insight. And one of these ideas was I'd heard of a field project that was going to take place in North Dakota in 1993. It was the North Dakota tracer experiment. I don't know if you've come across this in your research, but this was an opportunity to get involved in a field program where they were actually seeding clouds. And I proposed that I would run the two-dimensional cloud model that we were working on at NASA Goddard, and I would take it in the field and implement it as a forecast tool. So I would run the model first thing in the morning. We would give the results during the morning briefing, and then I would hop on an aircraft and fly through the storms in the afternoon. And she was just so totally into this. It was fantastic. And she came up with the money, and I didn't have to propose anything. She just came up with the money, and for me to spend 6 weeks in North Dakota for this. So we ran this model every morning. And if you think back to what the summer was like in 1993 here in the US, for my colleagues here, it was the Midwest floods, the historic floods of the Midwest in 93. So here we are in North Dakota in 93, we're running a tracer experiment. So we're running silver iodide on these aircraft, and we're seeding these clouds.
Now we know who to blame, right?
Exactly. So all this flooding is taking place.
The statute of limitations has run out.
And we actually had to stop the field program because we were concerned about the liability that was possible coming down the road, because at least where I was, we were based in Bismarck. Bismarck reached their annual rainfall in 30 days. And it was the 30 days that I was there.
Were you in the armored airplane that was protected against hailstones?
Yeah, that's the T-28. No, that was just the pilot.
Oh, okay.
But you're right. That aircraft had dents the size of softballs on it.
Sorry.
I thought your story about Robert White and Robert Simpson was really interesting. Can you share that story, Jim, here, because I thought it was something I'd never heard before and something really telling about bureaucracy.
Well, maybe I could tell it. I mean, I'm trying to remember the whole book, but
yeah, they say this is like a congressional inquisition when you come on here, Jim. And probably nobody else has experienced it any more than you have tonight.
No. This is all fun. They didn't get along. I don't think they hit it off. Bob White had recruited. Joanne left UCLA, sore and divorced woman, and wanted to know what to do with their house back in Falmouth. And it turned out that Wilhelm owned the house, and Bob met her at a Woods Hole summer seminar and said, why don't you come work on experimental stuff with then it was the Weather Bureau, 65, I think it was. And then it became ESSA, and then it became NOAA. And so I think they had some working understanding, but Bob kept getting moved around and reestablished here and there, and then I said the administration changed with NOAA. When they wanted to talk to Bob about possibilities of working together or possibilities of their job offer at Virginia, Bob White wouldn't even answer the phone. He wouldn't even consider it. So they were very much pushing up against the bureaucracy, seeing as a great limit to what they wanted to do. So I see both of them more like really curious, free spirits that want to do this stuff, and they're facing all these limitations of the administration, the imprimatur to go make it rain, go get some results, go do this, And so they pushed back against that. They didn't see their future at, but you know, back to the Christmas party, her archive is full of scrapbooks. And you can, if you get in there, John, you'll see a whole bunch of snapshots of people having a good time, singing songs and having tropical luau menus. And she retired twice. She retired from the NOAA, and then she retired from NASA, and both big scrap. And then they had a big AMS celebration for her and Bob later on in life. And so there's a lot of great emotional, pictorial kind of resources there. But I didn't see Bob White in any of the pictures. So maybe he's in. I think he's in a couple. Yeah.
Well, you relate the story in the book, Jim, that Hurricane Camille may have led to a grudge because
the Spiro Agnew story, right?
Yeah, Simpson did a beautiful job, with Hurricane Camille with very few resources.
Yeah.
And take it from there if you want to finish that story out.
Well, I guess it was the Nixon administration,
Mm-hmm.
if I'm not mistaken, and Agnew,
That's
the vice
right.
president, went out on a helicopter reconnaissance of the damage after Camille, and came back with a really poor report. But they actually couldn't get the resources they needed from the airplanes they wanted from the Air Weather Service. And so Bob was doing the right thing with his limited resources, but he ended up getting apparently, I don't know, getting told off by the White House, if you want to say it that way. And so Bob White felt squeezed between the White House and the Hurricane Center, and took it out on Bob Simpson.
Wow.
Well, I have one more for Dr. Scala, and then I know there may be some other pent up questions here because I've sort of hogged this night because I've loved this book. But Dr. John, you got a special honor somewhere along the way that you still count as one of your greatest honors. So tell us about that.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. Following on what Jim was saying about some of the awards that Joanne got at the end of her career. So she received her PhD in 1949. So NASA had a special celebration. It was actually a 2-day symposium, which eventually became a monograph, an AMS monograph that was published in 2003. But what they did was they brought in friends and colleagues in a format of a symposium to celebrate her 50 years as a PhD meteorologist. And so I received a call. I was working at the Weather Channel at the time, and I received a call to come up and participate in the symposium, which was a huge honor. And I thought, okay, what do you want me to talk about? And no, we want you to be the after dinner speaker after the symposium ended. And it was not only a thrill, but I was scared to death because there were so many of these, the pillars in our field who were there celebrating the giants who were celebrating with Joanne, another giant in the field. So I was given this incredible honor of being the after dinner speaker. And I will never forget, after I finished speaking, Joanne leapt up out of her seat, came up and gave me a huge hug in front of everyone that was there. And as I said to you, Bill, earlier today, that was probably the most proudest moment of my life was that night.
No, I think you have to play yourself in the movie, Dr. John. When, you and Kate Blanchett can come up and hug you. It'll be perfect.
You have to talk to my wife, maybe.
You'd already been at the Christmas parties with all these giants in the field, so you knew them.
It was a wonderful time, Jim. It was a wonderful time.
Doug Hildebrand, I know you've got a question for
so
Fleming.
Some really incredible words when it comes to Joanne as a mentor. And I don't know if this is for Dr. John or for Jim, but what could we all learn from Joanne to be a better mentor? Because I'm at that point in my career where I kind of looked for mentors, but then also looked for mentees.
Mm-hmm. I think.
So is there? Yeah.
Should I jump in, Jim? Is that okay?
Please.
Okay. I've been both, Doug, and I've had some wonderful mentors, one of whom was my PhD advisor, who was a student of Joanne's, Mike Garstang. And that's another story about how they met. But I have achieve great fulfillment as a mentor. And I think all of us in the scientific field, we have been mentored to some degree or another. And that's a way of playing it forward and being able to do the same thing to the next generation of scientists. So Doug, I know you've done both. It's a tremendous opportunity to not only advance your own knowledge, but advance the knowledge of the next generation.
Well said.
Definitely.
All right, James. Unless anybody else has anything, I guess Dr. Scala he turns into a pumpkin shortly.
No, he can't. He's going to stay up all night with us. He can't. For Jim and John, tell me, she died in what, 2010, I think, at the age of 86. Yeah. Tell me about her retirement and slowing down. I guess as I'm an old guy, I'm curious about that. It just seems like she worked so hard. What was it like for her slowing down and going into retirement? What was it like in the later years of her life?
She was I don't know. I mean, John probably worked with her to near the end, but she was specially equipped at NASA Goddard with her own electric wheelchair and cart. They even put up convex mirrors on the corners so she could turn the corners quickly. Legend has it there's some skid marks on the tiles, marks on the paint that they didn't paint over. But she kept going. She just really kept going. And then finally, that she had a lot of health problems and had a lot of. She had hip replacement surgery. She had eye problems. She had migraine headaches. The other theme in the book was her overcoming her physical pain and limitations, as well as the emotional stuff, and then the discrimination stuff. And she overcame depression, migraines, a lot of injuries, eye problems. She even had eye surgery, and then immediately got on a flight to go to a conference. And she and Bob apparently were sitting in the seats together, doing calculations about the internal pressure of her eyes and why that was popping, making her eyes pop out after surgery. And so
I can see that. Absolutely, I can see that.
They were doing some ideal gas law equations.
Wow.
No, but
we saw the same thing with Dr. Fujita when we had the outstanding director who did the was it Nova or American Experience, one of those shows about Dr. Fujita. Yeah. When he was beset with diabetes later in life, he was studying his own body and taking notes about it.
Yeah.
I don't know her last public meetings, but I definitely met her in the 90s, maybe 2000s at American Meteorological. And she had come, Bob would push her around the conference in a wheelchair. I think she came to the gate 25th. That would have been, maybe that's, I don't know what year that was, but.
So if Joanne was on the show tonight, and I were to ask her, what's your greatest accomplishment? What do you think she would say?
Trim has got to be up there, I would say. The success of Trim.
Yeah, I think
Dr.
that was
Fleming. What do you say?
I think it's Trim. I think John's right for a project, and I think it's pulling it all together. Given her, she had a very interesting start in life, and she had a lot of struggles along the way. But the way I decided to end the book was it was all worthwhile, and I use the word all.
Yeah.
Pulling it back together. The mentors, Roger Pielke Sr. and Chris Kumaro and all those people she worked with. So I think it's a totality as well as the big satellite project, which now, Trim has a successor, the Global Precipitation Measurement satellites. And,
right.
And that's absolutely critical. She has a passage in there after retirement. She was able to sound off about water vapor in the tropics and how little we knew about the convection and the energy budget. So when John said energy budget, that rang a bell. That we don't have good information.
So if she would be on the show tonight, and I would ask her, what's your one word of advice for people on the weather enterprise today? What would that advice be?
I guess aim high and never give up. And she also said work harder than anybody. We heard that before. I think Aubrey said that. She said, she's like Woody Hayes. And he said, I'm not a great coach, but I work harder than the other coaches at Ohio State. And she said, I just have to outwork and outscore and out accomplish all of my competition, which she did.
Well,
I think she would also
asked her in 1947 to write something on the, the future of meteorology careers for especially, and she commented on how difficult it was for women. And I don't remember what else she said, Jim, you might remember from the book, but it was a very prescient, section of text that she wrote in that portion of the employment article for the AMS.
Yeah, and she was unemployed. She was a graduate student when she wrote it. They picked on her to write the Women in Meteorology chapter. It was about post-war opportunities for the field. Mm-hmm. And so that was just the beginning, where she wrote 3 or 4 more big essays about women in meteorology like that. But I think perseverance, she obviously had talent, but when she took 3 summer courses as a sophomore, or as a sophomore student, and by her junior year, she's teaching weather cadets. Just wow.
And I thought about you, Troy, when it said, at IIT, when she was teaching this meteorology course, it was full of field trips. Dr. Fleming, she took these meteorologists to all sorts of things, and they got so excited. And Troy, I thought that's what Troy would do.
Yeah. They went to the broadcast meteorology station. They looked at engineering designs for buildings and all kind of good stuff.
But Jim, as you point out, I think what I find so fascinating is that things started so rough, but like you said, it all came together. It all came together in the end, and I'm looking so much forward to reading the book. I haven't had a chance yet. I've been kind of busy, and but I am gonna do that, because this really excites me, because I think it shows what you can do.
Yeah.
So Jim, plug the book. Tell us the easiest way to get it.
The easiest way to get it is probably on Amazon. The least expensive way is to go to oup.com, the Oxford University Press, and there is a discount code. It's linked to my email signature. Let me give you the discount code.
Please do.
It's
People that listen to this show love to save a buck.
Use span 25. Span 25. It's easy to remember.
Span 25 is Weather Radio.
What was that? Okay, I'm going to read it off now. Get your pencils out.
It's out.
Okay, you go to oup.com and use promo code ASPROMP, PROMP8. ASPROMP8. Save 30%.
Ooh, like Geico.
ASPROMP8. See, that could be the show title for this week, and nobody would know what that is unless they listen to the show.
Yeah, I think it's like
AS Prompt 8. That'd be the greatest show title ever.
I get ready to say I can't think of a better show title for that, because
no.
you figure it out, you save some money, life's good.
Yeah, I was going to use Terrible Barbecue, but now we have a new show title, AS Prompt 8. So let's take a quick break.
You'll still save 30% on 2.
There you go. Let's take a quick break for Tony Rice, and Jen is not on with us live, but she has her segment this week in tornado history. We're going to come back with the weather roundup, picks of the week, and much more as WeatherBrains rolls along.
Thanks, everybody.
Looking beyond the atmosphere, here's Tony Rice with your astronomy outlook.
If you didn't have a bunny visit you this past weekend, you can still find one in the sky. The Constellation Lepis, Latin for hare, can be found at the feet of the easily located constellation Orion the Hunter. Unlike many constellations, Lepis doesn't come from a particular character in Greek mythology. Instead, 2nd century astronomer Ptolemy added it to his list of 48 constellations because, well, he thought it looked like a rabbit. Lepis is sometimes depicted as a rabbit being chased by Orion and his hunting dogs to the left, Canis Major, and Canis Minor. You can find Lepis after dark in the southwest through the spring and summer months, either by finding Orion and looking below, or by looking for the bright star Sirius, also known as the dog star, in the neck of Canis Major, and then looking down and to the right. Elsewhere in the sky, SpaceX plans the launch of its latest batch of Starlink satellites. T0 is scheduled for Wednesday, April 7th at 12:35 p.m. Eastern. So it'll be visible mostly from Florida and maybe coastal Georgia, but others along the Atlantic coast might want to mark their calendars for another launch on April 22nd and the Crew 2 mission. This is the second launch by SpaceX of astronauts bound for the International Space Station. It's scheduled for liftoff at 6:11 a.m., which is before dawn for most of the East Coast, and that could make for some pretty good viewing. Thinking back to a launch a few weeks ago, it produced a spectacular show as the rocket exhaust, expanding in the thinning air as the vehicle rose, was lit by the rising sun. This launch is closer to sunrise, which will make for a brighter sky, but it still could be pretty visible for many. Stay tuned. That's your Astronomy Outlook. Follow me RTP Hokie for more spacey stuff like this.
This week in tornado history, the Red River Valley tornado outbreak was one of the most significant outbreaks on record for this region. It occurred on April 10th, 1979. Per the Storm Prediction Center, 25 tornadoes occurred mainly in Texas and Oklahoma, with one lone tornado in the state of Kansas. 2 F4 tornadoes occurred during the outbreak. One hit the south side of Vernon, Texas, and the other struck Wichita Falls. The Wichita Falls tornado had a path length of almost 47 miles. It had a maximum width of close to 1 mile, and it reached that mile width as it entered the Faith Village neighborhood on the north side of Southwest Parkway. Most of the homes in this area were demolished. Tragically, 42 people lost their lives from this tornado event. 25 of the deaths were auto-related, and 16 of the 25 were people who entered their cars trying to evade the tornado. 11 of these 16 people left homes that were not even damaged. A total of 3,095 homes were destroyed in this event, and 600 were damaged. Over 1,700 injuries were reported. Ted Fujita surveyed the damage from this outbreak, and per the National Weather Service in Norman, he noted that the damage path of the Wichita Falls tornado was among the widest that he had ever seen. You can read about this event and hundreds more at tornadotalk.com. Calling all weather enthusiasts. Join the American Meteorological Society by becoming a member of the band at amsweatherband.org. As an AMS Weatherband member, you'll get to go behind the scenes with the scientists of the American Meteorological Society, whose members have been at the forefront of weather, water, and climate research for over 100 years. You'll learn about the very latest research from the scientists who are actually doing it. What's more, you'll become a part of a passionate online community of weather enthusiasts. Get access to exclusive videos, webinars, and other fun content, and support the science you love. Learn more and join the band today at amsweatherband.org.
And that is a very fitting segue for you, Mr. Doug Hildebrand. We are very proud to be associated with the Weather Band. I've got my pen right here. Woo! It's been really fun to be a part of it, and we wanted to have you on tonight to talk about it for a few minutes. And you've got some show and tell too.
I do, and I also want to introduce Coral. Is Coral on as well?
Hey, Coral.
Hello, I'm right here.
Awesome. So, the AMS Weather Band, it boils down to, why do you join a rock band fan club, right? For 2 reasons. 1, to show your enthusiasm and support for the band, and 2, to gain access and be a part of the band. And so with the Weather Band, we're giving enthusiasts that just love weather, right? We're giving them both of those. We're providing a platform for them to really engage and express their love for weather, but then we're also giving them access to all of the people, the weight of the American Meteorological Society, right? And so, what we're hoping to build is just, this energy and momentum and this sort of symbiotic relationship where the Weather Band members are pulling, right, information, soaking that up, but we're also allowing researchers and professionals within the AMS really have a sounding board out there and a megaphone to these weather enthusiasts as part of this weather band. So as it grows, you know, whether you want to be sort of a weather band member or you want to contribute to AMS by providing, you know, these great stories, such as, you know, learning more about Joanne Simpson tonight was just awesome.
So Coral, tell us what you do and how you got interested in the weather band. Troy, I didn't mean to cut you off. I want you to jump in right behind that.
No, I was just going to say, Doug, I mean, we talk about Joanne and how she mentored people and so forth. That's what this is all about, to give that opportunity, but to also allow students and other people that might have that interest to be able to be mentored, to learn some new things, right?
Absolutely. I mean, it's sort of building up the community. You know, let's tear down those walls. And, you know, I'm proud to be a weather band member, but then also contributing on the AMS side, you know, working both angles there. And I think there's a lot that our society can give back.
And Coral, you have a job that we would all love to have. So tell us what that is and how that fits into this.
I am an event coordinator for beach volleyball in beautiful Los Angeles, California. You know, this time of year, actually, collegiate beach volleyball is about to wrap up. They have their big national championships early in May. And then the junior side, we're going to start picking up in March. So these are athletes that are 18 and younger. And our season's just kind of picking back up. You know, we were one of the few sports that were able to keep going a little bit through the pandemic. So it's been really fun. So, but yeah, you know, some of my office days this time of year, I'm outside on the beach watching the sunset on the West Coast. It's lovely.
That is awesome. And tonight we also have Corey Demko with us. Corey, you got your degree in meteorology and also a PhD and your master's in atmospheric science from the University of Wyoming. So talk about why the weather band is important to you.
So the weather band is a conglomeration of unique individuals as so from my perspective, the AMS at a juxtaposition that's going on at research centers and universities across the world, and they can bring that to the forefront to be consumed by everyone and start answering some of the fundamental questions as to, hey, why are researchers really interested in studying, you know, tornado genesis or hurricanes or wind and numerical weather prediction model data assimilation techniques? Why are we doing this, and what impact they have in society moving forward? And I believe the weather bands is sitting like I said, at a juxtaposition that to bring that forefront scientific knowledge to everyday consumers.
So Doug, how can all of our audience become a member of the band?
Jump on the website, weatherband.org. And, you know, it's $28 a year, but you get a bunch of discounts right off the bat. And you get your show off the pin again.
Yeah.
There it is.
Yeah.
And, you know, it almost, I mean, it basically pays for itself if you know, kind of go down the, you know, these options that you can get, like WeatherWise and magazine and everything. But you get content, you get these engagements where we're setting up a tornado research conversation with Dr. Paul Markowski there at Penn State. You know, that Erica Groh is going to be moderating. And so again, I can't emphasize this more, and I hope Nate is resonating there. AMS, I mean, you kind of wonder, like, why didn't this happen years ago, where AMS creates this enthusiastic club? But it's now available. It started out in the fall, and you just have all that expertise of the AMS, you know, ready to engage with the greater public on, you know, all things weather.
Well, we thank you for being with us tonight. Coral, we thank you. Can't wait to get to Southern California, see some of those sunsets. And Corey, we appreciate you being with us too tonight. So,
hey, Coral, did you have a shake? Did you have a shaker out there today? What, a 4.0?
Yeah, I was actually, I'm house sitting, so I'm a little further south in my apartment, but it was actually like 10 miles from where I live. So I was like, I didn't feel it because I'm further south. And I was like, dang. You're a real Californian when you're like, oh, it's a 4. Like, oh, I didn't feel it. Dang.
I'm scared to death of those
I gotta give a
things,
shout out to
Big
Coral
deal.
because years ago, Coral interned with me here at WHSV. So
Aubrey taught me
to see
everything I need
Coral
to know about forecasting. So
you're
it's
doing
lovely to see you.
amazing things. I'm so excited and so proud of you.
Thank you.
All right, well, that's great, Doug. Thank you for being here. Thanks to AMS for being a part of the show, and we appreciate you guys and what you're doing. Stick around to the end here. James will ask you for a pick of the week if he makes it all the way to the end of the show tonight, because sometimes we're running over. But we're also glad to have Midland Radio as a sponsor. Bruce Jones joins us every week as the main ambassador of NOAA Weather Radio. Bruce, we had a very amazing show last week talking about the tornadoes that hit Alabama and Georgia and southeastern United States last Thursday, almost 10 days ago now. And it was a real lesson, a great example for us to hear, from people that were cord cutters. Don't pay attention to broadcast television. Right now I'm watching Baylor and Gonzaga. Baylor's beating Gonzaga tonight. But at the same time, that backbone of that warning process for that family that we talked to the other night needed to be a NOAA Weather Radio.
Yeah, we NOAA Weather Radio started about 60 years ago, and I think we went through a little phase here within the last decade or so where it was kind of pushed off to the side. It was yesterday's chopped liver, But I've been a huge proponent of NOAA Weather Radio since the 1970s because radio broadcasting it's simple, it's basic. I mean, you can put a radio station on the air with just like a piece of wood and almost like a coat hanger on top, and then you flip the switch and you're broadcasting a radio signal that goes for miles. So radio frequency is a very stable, reliable, inexpensive way to send information immediately. And so NOAA Weather Radio was designed to be an indoor tornado siren. So you didn't have to rely on the outdoor sirens. You didn't have to have your TV turned on and be watching TV. The NOAA Weather Radios will work even when the electricity is out at your home. So you're right, Bill. We really need to, re-emphasize the importance of having a radio-based warning system because the radio frequency is solid, it's stable, and this is an official broadcast that comes directly into your home from your nearest National Weather Service office. The forecaster who sits there at the radar and identifies a possible tornado and pushes the button that says tornado warning right now, that's the person that actually sends that message immediately into your weather radio within about 2 seconds. So to have a device that sits there like a smoke detector, silently working every single day of the year, 24 hours a day, and the darn things only cost you about $30, why in the world would any homeowner in America not have one of these? And that's what I've been saying long before I went to work for a weather radio manufacturer. I've been saying this for the last 40 plus years. Every home in America should have a weather radio.
And you're making it even easier for our listeners. Dr. Fleming did not have your scheme for marketing. The Oxford University Press, not quite as it's catchy with their discount code. Theirs was something that's going to be in the show title tonight. But yours is real easy to remember, Bruce.
Yeah, for those of you who aren't not watching on YouTube and not seeing the video, there is a promo code that you can use when you go to midlandusa.com, and let me spell it for you so you'll remember it. It's SPAN, as in James Spann, which is SPANN 25, SPANN 25. And when you use that promo code at midlandusa.com, you get 25% off all the weather products and accessories. So you can buy an emergency crank radio, which are perfect for when you have to evacuate from an onrushing hurricane. or you can have WR120, that white desktop radio that's so very popular. You can have one of those for your home. These make great gifts too. We've got Mother's Day and Father's Day coming up real soon. And if you have a mom, a dad, a grandmother, a grandfather, please consider getting them a NOAA weather radio so that they can be part of our weather ready nation. We are making strides in getting through to people and getting the messages out there. We need to remind everyone to have multiple redundant ways of getting life-saving warnings, and NOAA weather radio, I think, is still first and fastest.
It's the baseline to me, Bruce. And again, if I had to look at the cell phone versus weather radio, I think the greatest chance of failure, it's the cell phone side. A lot of things can go wrong there. Where weather radio, it's these big RF transmitters that are so reliable, and those things are so loud. And to me, that's the baseline. So every home, every business needs one. And it's still shocking to me how many people don't in tornado-prone areas. And again, we want you to be our disciple, if you will. If you've got one, you tell your neighbor to go get one.
That's right. Thank you for saying that. And we do ask all of you who watch or listen to this broadcast, be disciples for this and spread the word. It's very important.
And you're pushing the inventory out as quickly as you can down here in tornado-ravaged Alabama. So, because that's the first thing I heard. Well, I went to the Walmart or the Target or whatever, and we don't have them in stock. Well, go to the MidlandUSA.com and use the promo code. You get it at a discount, but they wait until the last minute. They wait until there's a tornado outbreak that night, and they think, well, I'm going to go down to the store and get one. Well, you need to do it like now when the weather's quiet. So when we do have an active day, and this is early April, they're coming, then you'll be in good shape. But anyway, Bruce, thank you. I appreciate you being on the show, and thanks for your work. It's over and over and over and over, you hear stories of that weather radio tripping. They heard it, they turned on the TV, they're in the Polygon, they go to a safe place, and their life is saved. So it really is a big deal. All right, let's see if Aubrey is around. Hello, Aubrey. Do you have by chance a moment for an email segment?
So I would, but I'm kind of locked out of my email at this point right now.
What? That'd be a good show title. Locked out of my email.
Well, do what Joanne Simpson would do. She would call a locksmith.
Break into it.
Break it.
No, we may have to do a little bit of a longer one next week.
Okay, we'll do a lot. In fact, I saw somebody just sent one asking what the weather's going to be like at the Masters. Didn't that come to email at weatherbrains.com? I try and watch these emails come in. So let's go right to the weather roundup since we're doing that. So who's closest? Nate, what's the weather going to be like at the Masters? You're the closest.
I have no idea.
Come on, man.
I barely know what the weather's going to be here tomorrow. I know that we've got a chance of rain Thursday, Friday, Saturday here because I'm working the NC State football spring game on Saturday. Got a 40% chance of showers, although I think the rain chance is actually better Thursday, Friday. So Augusta's not too far away from here. Wouldn't be surprised to see a chance of rain there.
I don't even know. Is the Masters this weekend? I'm not a sports guy.
Yes.
Okay.
Looks a little wet.
Unsettled. I think maybe that's the best way to describe it.
Pull up the National Weather Service forecast. Chance of showers 82 on Thursday. It's a 40% chance on Thursday, 60% chance on Friday, and then it looks like it might dry out for chance of thunderstorms on Saturday, 50%. Ooh. Yeah, so you probably a rain at some point or there. Although I got to tell you, it will probably help to rinse out the pollen because we have hit the pollening here, at least in North Carolina, and based on my Facebook feed in Alabama and Texas and everywhere else, I am basically snacking on Benadryl these days. It is insane. What I want to do,
show title.
What I want to do is get a Pez dispenser. Like I want to sell Benadryl in a Pez dispenser.
Wow,
that's probably illegal.
It probably is, but because I have had more Benadryl in the last week. I spent this weekend out helping a neighbor of mine. We share this sort of side yard, and it's got a low spot and it gets wet, so we dug a trench. We put in a French drain and all this other stuff. Well, I've spent more time outside in the last 3 days than I have in the last 6 months. And I've been inhaling all this pollen. and if I'm not snacking on Benadryl, I'm not breathing. Because you're coughing and sneezing and hacking and you're stuffy and you're runny nose. It's like, how can your nose be stuffed up and runny at the same time? That's the paradox I'm living these days. So
yeah,
I'm ready for some rain.
It's been a glorious season. This is the sort of second season of is it COVID or is it allergies?
That's right.
Yeah. Season 2. It's great.
Yeah. I'm over it.
All right. So, but I don't know if you saw that tweet from Florida State University. There was this pollen storm coming into the baseball stadium down there, Florida State. It was just, you sneezed looking at this video, and it is what it is. Aubrey has the pollen in Harrisonburg. You going to wash it away this weekend?
Yep. Hopefully we'll wash it away this weekend. But yeah, it is astronomically off the charts. The tree pollen is just, I don't suffer from tree pollen. So I am not popping Benadryl like Tic Tacs. But yeah, hopefully we'll get some rain this weekend. We could certainly use some of the moisture. We've got, but I mean, the Forest Service is doing a lot of control burns because of the dry conditions and stuff like that. So they're taking advantage of it. Had a huge 3,500 acre prescribed burn going on tonight. Peter Forrester got some amazing photos, had some nice sunsets. So, there's pluses and minuses to everything. So
I thought Harrisonburg was like Camelot, Aubrey. It was never allowed to rain until sunset or something like that. What was the climate must be perfect all year.
Something like that. We are in the rain shadow.
Kim, what's happening in Norman?
Well, aside from the pollinating, it's just really windy. We're just staying true to form here in Oklahoma, and it's going to continue to be through the week, as I understand it. I'm sort of similar to Nate. You get away from a forecasting job, and you know a lot about weather without knowing very much about weather. So you know what I mean. So, but I do know that, and I know that it is just stirring up all the goodness of the particulate matter and bringing it to all of us. So I feel you, Nate. I feel you. But it's otherwise extremely pleasant to be, in April in Oklahoma and no disasters on the near horizon. We're all recovering here from all the disastering you've been doing in Alabama, since so many of our scientists are part of Vortex Southeast and all of that. You've actually had a huge influx of us into your state, and everyone's just sort of coming back here to digest what's been going on there. So every week that we can have as a bit of a break is a blessing to us.
Amen to that. Doug, any pollen where you are? How's your pollen levels?
Not too bad, but I am a huge advocate of Flonase. I ain't try it.
You got the cicadas coming, Doug. That's going to be the fun thing for long.
I haven't seen one yet. But this is our sunburn
Does it ever rain in Southern California?
We're just wrapping up our rain season. That's usually over winter. So now we're
you're muted.
Can you hear me now?
I can
hear her just fine.
Well, yeah, we just wrapped up our rain season in the winter, so we're moving into our spring pattern, which 70s, little wind here and there in the morning. We'll start getting May gray pretty soon. That marine layer rolls in very thick on the coast, but yeah, sunshine in the afternoon.
How's the snowpack and the fire weather season setting up for this year? I've heard some rumors that it is not looking good.
We're very dry. I'm very concerned heading into the summer months, into the early fall. Our fire season has been getting longer the last few years. I was here when the Paradise fires were taking place. I saw them come over the hills. I live in the South Bay, and I can see the hills of Malibu. And the morning I saw those fires just kind of like roll into the afternoon over those hills. And for the first time I realized I actually have to I live here in wildfire country. This is strange. I'm from the South, so it's not something I'm used to. That and earthquakes has been an adjustment, but so far, good weather this weekend.
Joshua, where are you again? Where are you located? What's the weather like where you are?
I'm in Virginia, so just outside of Washington, D.C., where Doug is. But yeah, the pollen's not too bad. Been outside the last couple of days, so yeah, totally taking my Zyrtec and Flonase as well.
Are you gonna go see the cherry blossoms?
Maybe
they're done.
Not this year, but we might. Yeah, they are done. Might take the kids next year. We'll see.
So Troy, Corey, what's your day job? What do you do by day?
I mean, Joshua.
Well, I think isn't it Corey? I thought I maybe I read the notes wrong. I'm sorry. I see Joshua on the screen. I know that's part of his name, but do you go by Corey or Joshua?
I go by Corey. I trick a lot of people up with that. So my day job is I'm a data scientist.
Fake name on his screen here. That's great.
He's in the witness protection program, Josh.
Yeah.
Well, you're safe on this show.
So I'm
Corey, so you're good.
Yeah, we're gonna change that, right?
So what do you do?
So by day, I'm a data scientist for a company called CACI. So I work about 5 or so years ago. I transitioned into the data science, machine learning world. And currently build applications utilizing natural language processing for certain customers. And prior to that, I was in the atmospheric transport and dispersion modeling community doing hazard assessments for, chem, biological, radiological, nuclear hazards for the DoD. I did that for 5 years, and then prior to that, I was a graduate student at the University of Wyoming.
Well, you don't look old enough to have done all that, Corey. So keep doing what you're doing. You guys are amazing, Coral and Corey. Thank you for being with us tonight. So James, are you going to be with us to the end of the show tonight?
Yeah. Well, I got to go, but I was going to before I.
James froze. he forgot to put another quarter in. He was this close, Troy. He was this close.
I know.
I guess we'll kind of take it from here. So anyway, since our hero and leader is frozen there. Anyway, well, time for picks of the week, maybe. Let's go around the digital mahogany table here. I'll start in my lower left-hand corner and talk to Nate Johnson. Nate, got a pick for us?
New York Times article over the weekend talking about colors. We spent a lot of time on this program talking about word choices and colors and what they mean. And with the advent of COVID and the pandemic and everything, there's been a lot of these different scales that have talked about, what the spread is in your state or your community. And as it turns out, they're not any good at picking colors either. It seems like green, yellow, maybe orange, red, and you get outside of that and it's a crapshoot and none of them work. And then there's New Mexico, and that's the only tease I'm going to tell you, but the article's worth a read.
Well, my wife is from New Mexico, so I'll have to look into that. Are you saying they're getting it right, or are they getting it really, really, really wrong, Nate?
I'll let you read the article, but there's some interesting color choices, and I think culturally appropriate maybe for the state. But I think it's one of those things that the outsiders look at it and it's like, what are you thinking? But for people in the state, it might just work quite well. Might be a local thing.
That's outstanding. So Nate, you got next week's show. Why don't you give us a tease about that?
Yeah, looking forward to it. So 10 years ago next week, we had a big tornado outbreak here in North Carolina. And at AMS the following year, Bill Bunting from the Storm Prediction Center said this would have been the outbreak that we would have been talking about from 2011 had April 27th not happened. It was a high-risk day in North Carolina, multiple tornadoes. Unfortunately, we lost more than a dozen people in that outbreak across the whole Southeast. Pulling together Chris Homan, chief meteorologist at ABC 11, Nick Petro, who's the warning coordination meteorologist at the National Weather Service office here in Raleigh, and Virginia Enzer, who is one of our main Skywarn people from a spotter perspective, just to talk about that day. And that event was a Saturday that I will never forget because I was working at the WRAL at the time. So we'll talk about that event. And then we'll have 2 weeks after, for the next 2 weeks after that, we'll be talking about April 27th.
And there's been some changes in the deadline for the session topics of the AMS. Nate, can you shed any light on that? And any news from the NWA? You cannot. Okay.
No news from the NWA yet. Expect to have a couple of conversations later this week and early next week, and may hear some news. I can tell you that we do have folks who are now actively reviewing all of the abstracts that were submitted. Almost 300 abstracts were submitted for our meeting coming up in August, and they are being reviewed now by a panel of experts, and hopefully we'll have a final program in the not terribly distant future. So stay tuned.
I was looking at tonight at dinner, and Henry Rothenberg from TV5 in Nashville showed up on the screen there in the restaurant, and so I had to text him and say, "We're watching you on Channel 5, Henry." And next thing I know, they're giving a shout out to Hopkinsville, Kentucky, where I am tonight. And so he used his weathermetric site in Hopkinsville to give a little shout out there indirectly tonight. So we love Henry. Kim Cloco McLean, I'm so glad you could join us tonight, because this has just been, a mind-blowing discussion, a mind-blowing reading of this book. And I'm just thankful that we're, we may not be to the end of the journey, but at least we're further along than we were 60 or 70 years ago.
Absolutely. I'm thrilled to read the book, and it's going to be really great for me since my own doctoral advisor won the Joanne Simpson Mentorship Award, and she was instrumental in me making it, so there's just a stream of great mentorship that goes into everything that is our field. I'll be really, really thrilled to read that book. Thank you for having me. It's a classic tale of trying to make the balance, is why I was even late to the show. People who are frequent listeners know that there are times that I have a baby, she's 5 months old, and there are just times where between her and the 2.5-year-old, and I don't make it to 8 o'clock, so I'm just happy when I can make it here, and what a wonderful show topic to come into, coming off of that. It's inspiring to see people who can go through these difficulties and feel some of the same things that I'm feeling, and know that could change over time. There's a light at the end of the tunnel.
Well, we know that Dr. Simpson would be really proud of what you've accomplished in our field and what you do each and every day. You got a pick of the week for us? I
do. I claimed it really quickly as soon as the article appeared. So it's been a couple of days, but it is Washington Post, the Capital Weather Gang, doing a nice piece on the difficulties of National Weather Service and the IT infrastructure. We had a great discussion last week involving some of the challenges that have been going on. And then the next day, Tuesday, there was a really big system-wide outage that was even more profound than what had been experienced previously. So it's a really kind of tough read. They don't hold back a whole lot, and this is a topic that I know is of interest to people who work in the weather service too. This is a real frustration to the people who are working at the desk and not knowing if their warnings are going to go out, in ways that they're accustomed to, and if they'll have to troubleshoot something on the fly. It's just an interesting, difficult challenge if you want to learn more about sort of the whys and hows of how it came to be and where things are. It's a good read.
Yeah, this story is to be continued for sure. So thank you for that, Kim. Bruce Jones, you always have a great pick of the week for us.
Well, yesterday was the anniversary of the 1974 super outbreak, and you can find all sorts of great little books on the internet and on Abe Books. Sorry, the titles always flip around. This is the Ohio tornadoes. That's Xenia High School on there. This was all put out by that publisher down in Lubbock, Texas. The Alabama tornadoes, the Monticello, Indiana tornado. I've got another one over there about Covington, Kentucky, but it's kind of interesting to find these books and read these stories, because it's a timeless story that unfortunately gets repeated every year in the United States of America, and it's called tornado season. So.
Yeah, that April 3rd night is a night that will live in infamy in our state and here I'm in Kentucky tonight, but in Alabama and in my memory, because it was my generational outbreak for sure. And thank you for that, Bruce. And we're glad to have you here tonight. I'm going to take the foghorn for mine tonight. I'll have to use Dr. Fleming's book as my pick of the week, because it really is an outstanding read. You know, sometimes a study of a scientific person can be rather dry, and this one is anything but that. So look for the movie starring Dr. John and Kate Blanchett very soon, coming to a movie theater near you. Doug Hildebrand, I know you got a great pick of the week for us.
Yes, it's a great read, and it's hashtag Safe Place Selfie. Safe Place Selfie Day is Wednesday. You got NOAA Weather Radio messaging. The actual idea of Safe Place Selfie really came out of NWA's social media committee about 6 years ago. And so NWA has been incredibly supportive of our Safe Place Selfie Day. So be a part of it, get a safe place selfie, and challenge others. That's what it's all about. It's getting people who don't really think about weather preparedness at all. Let's get them excited. Let's get them to do the number one thing, which is find their safe place when that NOAA weather radio goes off, when their cell phone goes off. They need to be able to take action and go to the right place.
And use that social media for a good purpose.
There you go.
Thing. Troy Kimmel, you can see you're settled in, and
yeah, I've been waiting now. I figured Bill Murray. We're 2 hours and 30 seconds into this show, and I'm waiting for Bill Murray to decide where my temporary residence is for the next 3 months. Now, I've let you look at the picture back here.
Looks like a Homewood Suites, Troy. I think that's the Homewood Suites in Austin.
Is that a Whataburger though in the painting? That looks like the
that's the city skyline of Austin, Nate.
That's what
that looks like. Whataburger. Gig 'em.
Actually, the Homewood Suites by Hilton, Northwest Austin, my home for the next 3 months. They have finished demoing the flood damage from the winter storm now, and I'm happy to report I was there today, and they're actually now rebuilding the interior of the house and the office. So I'm really happy about that. I'm so great to hear from Doug tonight about AMS Weather Band. I think that's great. I want to show you, we packed up trash in my house. They actually stored trash, but the one thing I got out, and I have to get Bruce Jones this, I have 2 weather radios in a 2-bedroom suite here. And so there's your Midland Weather Radio. And Bruce, I'm going to mention this. This is my pick of the week. And I tell you this because today I had probably the best discussion with our good friend, Bruce Thomas. I had a long phone conversation with him today, and he wanted me to tell everyone hello, of course, with the loss of his dear wife, Ann, a couple of weeks back. And it's the first time Bruce and I talked since the winter storm, and I lost my home and of course in the last few weeks. But Bruce told me to tell you all that he loves you, and that all the WeatherBrains out there that he is he seemed like he's doing really well. And it was a great talk today. It was motivational for me. So I just wanted to, that's my pick of the week. There's no link that goes with that, but I just figured you need to hear that.
Well, that's a good one, Bruce. There's no better pal than our Bruce Thomas.
Yep.
Thank you for sharing that. So you lost your home, he lost his anchor, Troy, and it's an amazing relationship. But thank you for sharing that.
Yep.
Coral, I'm going to come to you. We're trying to save the best for last here, you guys. Coral, what you got for us? Pick of the week.
All right, my pick of the week is our AMS Weather Band. We have a blog post going on about how to get started as an amateur weather observer. Join CocoRa's. They're always looking for observers and stations, and that data is so vital to National Weather Service workers, especially in the Southwest. It's drought century here, so any information we can get on rainfall, snowfall, it's so appreciated. It gives us a better idea of what happens in these local forecasting areas. So check out those articles. It's a multi-article series, so stay tuned for more updates.
That's awesome. We're so glad you joined us tonight, Coral. Thank you so much for what you do, and come back soon. And Corey, what you got for us? Pick of the week. No pressure here.
So going with weather bands here. Last week I just submitted a blog post idea, and I wrote it up pertaining to Mars data assimilation techniques and just what is data assimilation and why do we do it. And so be looking for that as well. And trying to bring some more historical content to the AMS Weather Band. I began working on a blog post pertaining to Claude Navier. We all know Claude Navier, part of fluid dynamics and Navier-Stokes equations. And a lot of people don't know that Claude Navier, during his day, was best known for his engineering work on suspension bridges. And lo and behold, that was not the best part of his life, as we know that he went on to produce the Navier-Stokes equations. So trying to bring some of those historical events that are kind of not well known, even in the atmospheric science community, and trying to get that out in the forefront to our everyday consumers to try to get some of those aha moments within us.
That is outstanding. Looks like Doug Hildebrand, you picked some great folks to come on and represent the band tonight.
Amen to that.
Well, I guess unless there's some more business, I'd entertain a motion that we adjourn, Troy Kimmel.
Second.
There we go. I think that'll work. So WeatherBrains is the weekly netcast. It's all about weather. We do this labor of love every Monday night, generally at 8 p.m. Central Time, unless there's some extenuating circumstances. But you'll find us on all the normal places where you can find podcasts. And as we've heard recently, we've been called legendary by nobody less than Marshall Shepard. So we'll take that. Yeah. We'd also love your comments, or good or bad, on iTunes, and your emails at emails at weatherbrains.com. But for a very tired crew here tonight, I'm a guest booking officer, Bill Murray. I'll wish you a great week. Until I'll see you next time, as I always tell you, keep an eye to the sky, because you'll always have something fun to look at. All right, guys. Fabulous show. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Bill.
Thanks for having us.
Nice work.
Good luck, Troy.
Thanks, Doug.
Come back soon.
That.
Yeah. Thanks for being here, Doug.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is a wrap. Great show tonight. Talking about Joanne Simpson, her life. Good to have Dr. Fleming on the show, everybody else. Thank you guys for watching. We'll be back next Monday night for WeatherBrains. Join us on Song of the Night over on the Gram, Span WX. If you want to see some foolishness over there, we'll see here in a few minutes on that. But again, WeatherBrains, thank you guys for